Hi, my name is Gianna Hoover, and I'm a student at Vassar College and an intern at Work Wisdom here with Dylan Ehlert. Say thank you so much for joining. It's
Yeah,
so
thanks for
nice to
having me
be
today.
with you. Okay, so to start off, what inspired your career in business and strategy and operations, and sort of where does that come from?
Yeah, I feel like it kind of happened a little bit by chance. I mean, I went to school for economics. I was interested in politics. I had a poli-sci minor. I thought maybe I'd go into politics a bit. I don't know. It just
Yeah,
wasn't the thing that kind of happened for me. I was working while I was in school,
yeah,
um, doing project management work for a construction company, and just started to apply a lot of the things I was learning in college into the business context, and it sort of just evolved from there,
yeah.
uh, sort of organically. So,
Cool. And then what drew you to Work Wisdom specifically, and how does that sort of align with your professional values?
yeah, I mean, I was drawn to work wisdom initially by I started actually doing coaching with Kedron in 2023, and it was a huge moment of growth for me. I felt like I grew more professionally in those 6 months than I had in the last 6 years. And they ended up reaching out. I think she probably peeked behind the curtain, saw what my skills were a bit,
Yeah.
and understood what work wisdom needed, and reached out and asked if I'd come on as an associate.
Mhm.
And I said yes immediately
Yeah.
because it was such a transformational experience for me. And I think too, I'm just really drawn to kind of what I think work wisdom's purposes is to some degree, which is to um, really take those practices that we learn about and apply them in the real world inside of organizations, whether it be nonprofit, governmental, for-profit organizations, and really allow them to flourish. And I
Yeah.
saw that personally, and I wanted to be a part of the organization and make sure the organization is in a position to continue to do that and expand that influence.
Awesome. I love to hear that. So what are the key elements you would say then to like a successful business strategy? And then how do you incorporate those elements sort of in your work at Work Wisdom?
I don't know if I knew, maybe I wouldn't be here. I don't know if I know the full answer, but
Huh?
uh, I would say the thing that I've certainly learned over time is that less is more, or a
Mm,
better way of kind of thinking about that is making sure that your strategy is aligned and the sort of tactics that come out of that strategy is aligned with your capacity as an organization to execute those tactics. Um, I think ideas are actually pretty easy to come by.
mhm,
Kind of sitting around the strategy table and generating the ideas is kind of actually the easy part.
mhm.
Uh, Manifesting them into the world is the hard
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
And especially in small business context, which is what I've always worked in,
Mm.
um, you're wearing a lot of hats. So kind of in a small business, you're both working on the business constantly, and then you're also working in the business. So I have responsibilities day to day that I have to do every day, and the time that I have to implement those tactics may be less than I think when I'm sitting around the strategy table. So
Yeah.
less is more in sort of right sizing your strategic implementation to what your organizational capacity is.
Whoa, that's so cool. That's awesome. And then what would you say, what does the role of technology play in your work at Work Wisdom, whether in through strategy or just through your day to day? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'm always trying to think about ways that we can use technology to, I mean, coming back to the previous point, increase organizational capacity. So, I mean, I think one thing that we started to do or we're working on right now is to um, sort of automate some of the sort of task execution of doing some of our engagements at Work Wisdom.
Yeah.
And we're doing that because if we can get, an hour or two back per engagement, that gives us more time as a team to continue to build the organization. So, yeah,
Efficiency.
that's always kind of what I'm thinking about is, how can we use technology um to make things run a little bit quicker. And at the same time, always thinking about not just the efficiency of things, but the efficacy of things. I think that's the difficult thing that we're facing as we're heading into a new era in technology is
Yeah.
it's easy to automate certain things. You could automate, I don't know, we could automate maybe half of what we do at Work Wisdom, but how does the experience of our clients come out in that? And that's always something that I'm thinking about and balancing at Work Wisdom and just sort of broadly.
Absolutely, like a client first mentality while also having that sort of efficiency. That's
Yep.
really, yeah. And so then what does equitable growth mean to you in a business context? And how do you ensure that your strategies align with that principle? Sort of what you were talking about a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, first, when I think of equitable growth, I always think, and maybe that's just my biased going to school for economics, but
Yeah.
uh, in material terms,
Mhm.
so dollar terms, I'm always trying to figure out, this gets back to technology too,
Yeah.
how can we increase, the wages for everybody that works for the company,
Mm.
while also not increasing, the price too much for our
Yeah.
clients. And the answer to that does come back to your previous question, which is technology.
Mm.
Productivity is how we increase equitable outcomes for all people, while still kind of making sure that we're um, giving clients the best experience for the most reasonable price that we can. So I don't know. That's kind of one
Awesome.
way, and the
Yeah.
other way too is just making sure too that everybody that I work with, to the extent that I can, that we're continuing to kind of push people to grow in their career or to grow kind of personally. I think that's what I love about Work Wisdom is this kind of this ethos of becoming your best self. And
Wow.
I think that equitable growth is making sure that we have the time and the processes kind of at our fingertips to allow for people to grow.
Amazing. Wow. I love that. That's so amazing. And then what would you say is something unique about Work Wisdom's approach to things, whether through business strategy or just things that you've noticed, maybe that sets it apart from other consulting firms?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is that the process is a lot more bottom up than a lot of other
Mm.
strategic approaches. So it does bring in a lot of stakeholders, like a vast amount of
Yeah.
stakeholders in the organization.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's the big thing that sets it apart. I mean, a lot of strategic planning is typically a little bit more top down. And I don't think that the work wisdom approach is necessarily bottom up, but it
Okay.
incorporates more of a bottom up philosophy into it.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think through that is able to sort of, I guess, get the best of both worlds. So
Absolutely. Yep.
incorporate that feedback from the team, get people bought into the strategy too, because they were part of the process. I think that's the kind
That's
of
huge.
biggest
Yes.
differentiator is that a lot of times people in organizations feel that strategy is happening to them
Mhm.
or the sort of tactics or the strategic um, priorities are happening to them.
Yeah.
And I think with the work wisdom approach, when done well, people can feel a part of buy-in into that, but they can't with
Because
other
it's
processes.
two ways. Absolutely.
So the other thing I think kind of within the strategy that's really stressed really critically in the work wisdom strategy is flexibility. Uh,
Mm.
so Katrin and I talk about this all the time, and it's really, I think, a really important principle. I mean, there's some research that says strategic planning is almost a folly in the sense that things change, dynamics change, markets change. If you get too stuck in saying, "Hey, this is my strategy that I'm going to execute over the next 3 years," you could have your head down in your strategy book, implementing your strategy and missing opportunities that are coming by you. And so, work wisdom strategy is called real-time strategy for a reason. It's about thinking in the moment, being strategic in a 3 month, 6 month, 1 year sort of time frame, but also saying like, I have to be flexible, I have to be nimble. And I think that's also a really critical differentiator because yeah, you have to be adaptive. And sometimes strategies fail because they're not being adaptive. They're trying to check off a box saying, I have implemented the strategy that I have decided to implement when, you could get 9 months into something and that strategy that you came up with could be wrong.
The flexibility. Yes. Okay. And then also, as the chief operating officer of Two Dudes Painting Company, what do you find the most rewarding in your work?
Hmm. Um, the thing that I love about Two Dudes similar to Work Wisdom is always that um, we're all a team, but we're all able to kind of be individuals. I don't know if that's like kind of specific to my
Uh,
COO role,
yeah,
but as a person, I really value that. My sort of ability to be myself is really critical
yeah,
to me feeling sort of rewarded by what I do. And I think that's
yeah,
kind of true at Two Dudes for sure. I mean, on the day-to-day level, I mean, again, just coming back to what I said previously, I mean, I'm always trying to see how we can become more productive and use that productivity to grow outcomes for everybody.
yeah,
I mean, that's always kind of what my motto is, what I'm thinking about. So I
yeah.
do that at Wisdom. I do that at Two Dudes too, is how do we become more productive?
Mhm.
How can we have, wage rises for everybody in the organization? How can we make sure that through that productivity that people have a more rewarding, you
Yeah.
know, work experience?
For someone aspiring a career in business strategy, what advice would you give them? Like sort of off the bat advice.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's really, really important to kind of get down and do the work
Mm, yeah,
before you do the strategizing.
yeah,
I understand why some people may think, not think that, or why it's not even sort of necessarily useful to some degree, but um, I think that real world lived experience in whatever business context, I'm not saying it needs to be, every single context you need to get your hands dirty in order to do good strategic planning. But um, I think it is important to have lived through kind of doing a strategic plan and then suffering the consequences of it.
Mhm.
There's this old Steve Jobs kind of clip about consultants and about kind of that very thing is, the sort of problem sometimes with consulting may be that, you're making these decisions for which you bear none of the consequences or none of the outcomes.
Mhm.
And I think living through and understanding that the things that you do from a strategic planning perspective have consequences to your organization,
Mhm.
to individuals within your organization, to your customers, to kind of every sort of node in the business. I think is critical. And then also, I think too, living through trying to implement a strategic plan as well, you just gain more humility for why things can be difficult. Again, back to what I was saying prior, it's easy to have ideas. Ideas are cheap.
Mhm.
Um, what's really hard is making them in the world, is making things in the world. And I think if you don't have the experience of trying to bring things into the world, you do not have the proper framework for, yeah, I mean, what's
Yeah,
possible, what's not possible, what kind of drive ambition you need to make something to take paper into reality.
right.
I just think that context is so critical.
Absolutely. Yeah, making it a reality and taking it from an idea to a tangible um yeah, reality. That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much for joining. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. Yeah, and that's it.
It's good
Have a
speaking
good
with
rest of
you
your day.
too. Thank you. You too.